when ancient warnings, Surface Admiral Dexver of the Vorthok Empire had conquered 73 worlds in his distinguished career. His massive conquest fleet, stretching across space like a dark metal constellation, had never known defeat. The 850 warships under his command represented the pinnacle of galactic military engineering, each vessel bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand stellar radiation. Today's mission seemed routine, almost insultingly simple compared to his previous campaigns. The target world, designated as Sector 7L4 Prime, appeared unremarkable in every database entry. A blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star, populated by a bipedal species that had barely achieved primitive spaceflight. Their technology was laughably outdated, their military presence scattered across a single world, and their political structure fragmented into hundreds of small nations. Intelligence reports suggested they still used chemical propulsion for their spacecraft and kinetic weapons for warfare. It should have been over in hours. Dexver stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominator, watching the tactical displays with practiced eyes. His scaled skin, a deep purple that marked him as one of the Vorthok nobility, caught the light from the holographic star charts. His four arms moved with precise efficiency as he reviewed the invasion plans, while his secondary eyes tracked the movements of his bridge crew. Everything was proceeding according to the standard conquest protocol that had served him so well across dozens of campaigns. Commander Zelenoth, his second-in-command, approached with the final targeting solutions. The younger Vorthok's enthusiasm was barely contained as he presented the data. "Admiral, our scouts report the inhabitants have detected our fleet. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but their messages are crude and disorganized. Some appear to be attempting communication. Others seem to be evacuation orders to their outer colonies." Dexver nodded, Most species responded with either desperate pleas for mercy or futile attempts at evacuation when faced with overwhelming force. The pattern was so predictable that he had stopped paying attention to the specifics decades ago. "What do they call their world, Commander?" "According to their own broadcasts, they refer to it AS." Zelenoth paused, checking his translation device. "Earth, Admiral. A simple designation meaning ground or soil in their primary languages." The word hit Dexver like a physical blow. His primary arms froze mid-motion, while his secondary eyes widened in recognition. Earth, that name echoed through the deepest, most restricted archives of galactic history. His mind raced through fragments of half-remembered warnings, ancient protocols, and classified reports that were older than most civilizations. "Stop the fleet," he commanded, his voice carrying a tension that made every officer on the bridge turn to stare at him. "Admiral." Zelenoth's confusion was evident in his voice. "Sir, we're already in optimal attack position. The invasion can begin within minutes." I said, "Stop the fleet." Dexver's roar echoed through the bridge. "Full stop, all vessels. Deploy defensive formations immediately." The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as officers scrambled to execute orders they didn't understand. Dexver ignored the confusion around him, his mind focused on accessing the most secure archives in the Vorthok database. His personal command codes opened files that had been sealed for millennia, documents that existed in formats so ancient that modern translation systems struggled to parse them. The first file that loaded made his blood run cold. It was a warning notice issued by the Galactic Preservation Council nearly 3,000 years ago. The text was brief but absolute. The world designated as Earth in the Sol system is to be considered a Class X anomaly. All contact is forbidden. All approach is discouraged. All engagement is prohibited. This restriction is permanent and non-negotiable. But it was the attached testimonies that truly frightened him. Account after account from various species scattered across millennia, all describing encounters with the inhabitants of Earth. The Zeltharian mining consortium had sent a survey team to Earth's moon 800 years ago. Only one member returned, speaking of humans who had somehow detected their presence and launched primitive chemical rockets to investigate. The survivor described humans who showed no fear, only curiosity and a disturbing eagerness to communicate with beings from another world. The Corvan pirate fleet had attempted to raid Earth's asteroid belt 4 centuries ago, thinking to steal resources from a primitive species. They had encountered human mining operations that shouldn't have been possible with their technology level. The humans had not only defended themselves, but had somehow reverse-engineered Corvan shield technology in the middle of battle. 3. Pirate vessels were captured, their crews held not as prisoners but as guests, while humans asked endless questions about their ships, their worlds, and their cultures. Archive Keeper Morden materialized on the bridge, his ancient form flickering slightly in the holographic projector. The old being's species had been among the first to achieve faster-than-light travel, and he had personally witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations. His appearance on the bridge meant that Dexver's access to the restricted archives had triggered ancient protocols. Admiral Morden's voice carried the weight of millennia. "You have accessed the Earth files. I trust you understand what this means." "I'm beginning to," Dexver replied, his voice subdued. "But I need to understand completely. My fleet is already in their system. We're committed to this position." Morden's expression grew grave. "Then you are in more danger than you know. The humans of Earth are not like other species, Admiral. They do not respond to threats as other civilizations do. They do not fear conquest because they do not truly understand defeat. Every species that has encountered them has come away changed, and not always for the better." The archive keeper gestured, and new files appeared on the bridge displays. Video records from encounters spanning centuries showed humans in various situations. Unlike other species, who typically responded to alien contact with fear, worship, or aggression, humans displayed an almost pathological curiosity. They asked questions, they experimented, they adapted. Most disturbing of all, they smiled. One recording showed a human child, no more than 10 years old by their species standards, calmly approaching a Thrakari war beast that had accidentally materialized in their settlement. The creature stood 3 meters tall and was covered in natural armor that could deflect energy weapons. The child offered it food and began talking to it, completely unafraid. Within hours, the beast was following the child around like a pet, and the human had somehow convinced it to demonstrate its abilities to a growing crowd of fascinated humans. Another file showed human soldiers during one of their own primitive wars, carrying wounded comrades through enemy fire while singing songs and making jokes. They treated mortal danger as if it were merely another day's work, finding humor and camaraderie in situations that would break the morale of most galactic civilizations. But the most disturbing record was from the Alterian diplomatic corps, who had made formal contact with human governments 50 years ago. The meeting had been intended as a standard first contact protocol, a simple exchange of basic information and cultural overview. Instead, the humans had prepared detailed questions about Alterian society, technology, and history. They had presented gifts that demonstrated an understanding of Alterian culture that should have been impossible for a species making first contact. When asked how they had known so much, the human ambassador had simply smiled and said, "We're very good at learning." Navigation Officer Krita, the youngest member of the bridge crew, had been monitoring the tactical displays while the senior officers consulted the archives. Her voice trembled as she made her report. "Admiral, we're detecting movement from the human settlements. They're not evacuating, sir. They single quotes, re... They're launching ships toward us." Dexter felt his heart skip a beat. Hostile action? No, sir. The vessels appear to be civilian transports and research ships. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, transmitting what appear to be greeting messages, mathematical sequences, and music, sir. They're playing music. The Admiral stared at the tactical display, watching as dozens of primitive human vessels approached his mighty fleet. Any other species would have fled in terror or launched desperate attacks. But the humans were coming to meet them, bringing gifts and songs and questions. They weren't afraid of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They were excited to meet it. Commander Zelenoth studied the approaching human vessels with growing bewilderment. "Their ships are completely outmatched, Admiral. We could destroy their entire fleet with a single frigate. Yet they're approaching, as if they expect us to welcome them aboard for negotiations." "That's exactly what they expect," Morden said quietly. "And that is why Earth is forbidden territory. The humans don't conquer through force or fear. They conquer through curiosity and friendship. They make you want to share your secrets, your technology, your culture. They make you want to help them, to protect them, to learn from them. And before you realize it, they've changed you more than you've changed them." Dexter felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. His fleet was already deep in the Sol system, close enough that retreat would be difficult and potentially viewed as weakness by his enemies. But the alternative was facing a species that had driven every other galactic civilization to seal them away behind warnings and restrictions. The first human transmission reached his ship, and despite every instinct screaming at him to refuse, Dexter found himself ordering the communications officer to put it through. A human face appeared on the screen, young and eager, with the kind of open expression that had apparently charmed and terrified the galaxy for millennia. "Greetings, visitors from the stars," the human said in carefully pronounced galactic standard. "I am Dr. Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Space Committee. We are incredibly honored by your visit and would love to learn about your civilizations. We have prepared gifts of music, art, and scientific data that we hope will interest you. We also have many questions, if you're willing to share your knowledge with us." The transmission ended, but the damage was done. Dexter looked around his bridge and saw the same expression on every face. Despite decades of military training and experience conquering hostile worlds, his officers were intrigued. They wanted to know more about these strange humans who greeted invasion fleets with gifts and curiosity. That was when Admiral Vexfer truly understood why Earth was forbidden territory. The humans didn't need weapons or shields or superior technology. They had something far more dangerous: the ability to make their enemies want to be their friends. When legends become reality, the human transmission had been playing on repeat. In Admiral Vexfer's private quarters for 3 hours, he had watched Dr. Sarah Chun's greeting 17 times, analyzing every word, every gesture, every subtle expression. Each viewing only confirmed his growing certainty that his fleet was facing something unprecedented in galactic history. Commander Zelenoth entered without announcement. A privilege reserved for the most critical situations. His secondary arms carried data tablets while his primary hands gestured in the traditional Vorthok expression of urgent confusion. "Admiral, the human vessels have taken position around our fleet. They're not forming attack formations or defensive perimeters. They're creating what their transmissions describe as a welcoming formation." "Explain," Dexter commanded, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "They've arranged their ships in a pattern that corresponds to mathematical sequences. We've been transmitting as part of our standard first contact protocols. They're responding to our presence as if we were expected guests rather than an invasion force." Zelenoth's voice carried a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. "Sir, they've been broadcasting continuously for hours. Music, poetry, scientific data, historical records, and personal messages from their citizens. They're trying to give us their entire culture." Dexter moved to the observation deck, where the impossible sight of Earth hung in the void before him. The planet appeared peaceful, almost welcoming, with its blue oceans and swirling white clouds. But he knew now that this serene appearance was perhaps the most dangerous trap in the galaxy. "Communications patch me through to the human vessels," he ordered. The same young woman appeared on the screen, her expression even more eager than before. Behind her, Dexter could see other humans working at primitive computer systems, their faces bright with excitement and curiosity. They looked like researchers preparing for the discovery of a lifetime, not civilians facing an invasion fleet. "Admiral Dexter of the Vorthok Empire," he introduced himself formally. "I am curious about your response to our arrival. Most species react with fear or aggression when confronted with superior military force." Dr. Chan's smile widened. "Oh, we're not afraid, Admiral. We're thrilled. This is the first time we've encountered a spacefaring civilization, and we have so many questions. We've been studying your fleet movements, and your technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours. We were hoping you might be willing to share some of your knowledge with us." "Share our knowledge," Zelenoth muttered behind him. "They want us to teach them how to build better weapons." But Dexter was listening to something else in the human's voice. Dr. Chen wasn't asking about weapons or military technology. She was asking about everything. Science, culture, philosophy, art, history. She wanted to learn about their entire civilization, not to steal or conquer, but out of pure intellectual curiosity. "Dr. Chen," he said carefully, "are you not concerned that my fleet could destroy your world?" The human's expression grew thoughtful. "Well, yes, theoretically you could. But why would you want to? We have so much to learn from each other. We've prepared detailed information about human art, music, literature, and scientific achievements. We'd love to learn about your equivalent cultural developments." Archive Keeper Morden materialized beside the Admiral, his ancient form flickering with urgency. "Admiral, I'm detecting something unprecedented. The humans are broadcasting technical specifications for their primitive spacecraft. They're not hiding their capabilities. They're actively sharing them." Dexter felt a chill run through his spine. "They're showing us their weaknesses." "No," Morden said quietly. "They're showing us their trust. They're demonstrating that they have no hostile intentions by making themselves completely vulnerable. And in doing so, they're making it psychologically impossible for us to attack them." The communication channel crackled, and Dr. Chun's voice returned. "Admiral, we've received some concerning reports from our long-range sensors. It appears that several of your vessels have weapons systems that are powered and ready for deployment. We're not familiar with your cultural protocols, but we wanted to assure you that we pose no threat to your fleet. We're scientists and explorers, not warriors. Commander Zelenoth leaned forward. Admiral, they're right. Our weapons are still in attack configuration. Standard invasion protocol. Stand down, all weapons, Dexver ordered immediately. All vessels, defensive posture only. The relief in Dr. Chun's voice was audible. Thank you, Admiral. That's very reassuring. Now, we were wondering if you might be interested in a cultural exchange. We have musicians, artists, and scientists who are eager to learn about your civilization. We could arrange for small groups to visit each other's vessels under whatever security protocols you prefer. Dexver cut the transmission and turned to his senior staff. The bridge had fallen. Silent, every officer staring at him with expressions of confusion and growing concern. He could see the same thought in all their eyes. The humans were making this situation impossible to resolve through traditional military action. Analysis, he commanded. Science Officer Veltar stepped forward, her data tablets showing detailed scans of human society. Admiral, we've been monitoring human communications across their planet. Their governments are coordinating a unified response to our arrival, but it's not military preparation. They're organizing cultural presentations, preparing scientific data packages, and training translators in multiple galactic languages. They're preparing to befriend us, Weapons Officer, Kryndos added, his voice filled with disbelief. Sir, they're treating our invasion fleet as if it were a diplomatic mission. Navigation Officer Krita looked up from her displays with an expression of growing alarm. Admiral, there's something else. Long-range sensors are detecting human vessels launching from their outer colonies. They're not evacuation ships, sir. They're cargo vessels loaded with what appear to be gifts and cultural artifacts. Dexver felt the situation spiraling beyond his control. The humans weren't just refusing to be conquered. They were actively trying to turn their would-be conquerors into friends and allies. Every military protocol he knew was useless against an enemy that refused to be an enemy. Sir, Communications Officer Ventar reported, we're receiving additional transmissions from Earth. They're broadcasting what they call entertainment for our crew. Music, visual art, and something they describe as comedy. They want to make sure we don't get bored during our visit. Entertainment. Zelenoth's voice cracked slightly. They want to entertain us. Archive Keeper Morden S. expression grew grave. Admiral, this is exactly what the ancient warnings described. The humans are demonstrating their most dangerous characteristic. The ability to make any situation about friendship and mutual benefit, rather than conflict and conquest. A new transmission arrived. This one from a different human. An elderly man with white hair and kind eyes appeared on the screen, speaking in perfect galactic standard. Admiral Thexvar, I am Professor Marcus Webb, representing the Earth's Historical Society. We understand that your species has a long and distinguished military tradition. We would be honored to learn about your greatest victories and the strategies that made them possible. We have prepared presentations about human military history that might interest you in return. Dexver stared at the screen in amazement. The human was asking to learn about Vorthok military conquests, not to develop better defenses, but out of genuine academic interest. Professor Webb was treating their invasion fleet as if it were a floating university. Admiral Zelenoth said, quietly, I'm beginning to understand why other species have sealed Earth away. The humans aren't just refusing to be conquered. They're trying to turn us into scholars and teachers instead of warriors. That's exactly what they're doing, Morden confirmed. And it's working. Look at your crew, Admiral. They're not thinking about conquest anymore. They're thinking about what they could learn from these humans, what they could teach them, what kind of friendships they could form. Dexter looked around his bridge and realized the archive keeper was right. His officers were studying the human transmissions with curiosity rather than tactical analysis. They were discussing human culture, human achievements, human potential. The humans had somehow transformed his invasion fleet into an exploration mission without firing a single shot. "Sir," Communications Officer Ventar said softly, "the humans are asking if we'd like to hear some of their music. They've prepared a selection of what they call classical pieces that they think we might enjoy." "Put it through," Dexter found himself saying, against every instinct that screamed at him to maintain military protocol. The bridge filled with the sound of human music, complex harmonies, emotional melodies, and intricate rhythms that spoke of a species capable of creating beauty purely for the joy of creation. The music was unlike anything in the galactic databases, uniquely human yet somehow universal in its appeal. As the music played, Dexter realized that his conquest of Earth was already over. Not because the humans had defeated him, but because they had made defeat impossible. You couldn't conquer a species that greeted your invasion fleet with gifts and friendship. You couldn't destroy a civilization that responded to superior force with curiosity and trust. "Fleet-wide communication," he commanded. "All vessels, prepare for immediate withdrawal from the Sol system." The bridge erupted in shocked murmurs. Commander Zelenoth stepped forward, his voice urgent. "Admiral, we can't retreat now. The entire galaxy will know we turned away from a primitive world. Our reputation will be that we were wise enough to recognize a threat beyond our understanding." Dexter interrupted. "The humans of Earth are not primitive, Commander. They're the most advanced species in the galaxy, and they don't even know it." As the Vorthok fleet began its withdrawal, a final transmission arrived from Earth. Dr. Sarah Chen appeared on the screen one last time, her expression genuinely disappointed. "Admiral, we're sorry to see you leave so soon. We were hoping to learn so much from each other. If you ever return to our system, you'll always be welcome. We'll be here, waiting to meet you as friends." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Dexter stared at the empty screen, knowing that he had just encountered the most dangerous force in the galaxy, a species that could turn enemies into friends, conquerors into protectors, and warriors into scholars, all with nothing more than curiosity, kindness, and an absolute refusal to be anything other than themselves. In his private log, filed under the highest security classifications, Admiral Vexfer wrote a single line that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. "Earth is not a world to be conquered. It is a world that conquers everything it touches, including the hearts of those who would be its enemies." The Vorthok fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind but carrying with them something they had never possessed before, the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy there was a species that could teach them to be better than they had ever imagined possible. Asterisk.